because as a creator, your only job is to create, right? At the end of the day, your audience is going to react however they're going to react. You can't control that. But what you can control is whether or not you're putting pen to paper or you're moving.
Hello, you lovely humans. Welcome to the Live Outrageously with Lady Grey podcast. I'm your hostess, Lady Grey, and I have had the great honor to interview a number of super inspiring world changers about how they live outrageously. So we're going to share about how they push boundaries, they fight for change, and how they seriously shake up the status quo. Friends, I am so excited to welcome Christian Thompson to the show. He is currently playing Smokey Robinson on Broadway in Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. He is an actor, a singer, a dancer, a choreographer, director, emerging writer, but most importantly, an outrageous creator. Welcome, 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 Christian.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's so great to talk to you again. So let's talk about the fact you've had this really kind of outrageous journey already. You're quite young, and a lot of us know you for your work on Broadway. But I wanted to kind of give you the opportunity to kick things off by sharing what you would kind of consider your other career highlights or things that have happened in your life that you're really, really proud of.
Sure. I'm really humbled by my journey so far, I think is the best way I would put it. I guess the highlight clip for me, right, would be starting at 8 years old and deciding that I was going to be an actor, right? And everything after that was, it became a practical thing. So it wasn't so much of a dream, which is always interesting to talk to people about. So that was the first highlight, was this 8, 9-year-old kid going, I'm going to be an actor. Not, I hope one day I'm going to be an actor. That weirdo. So did that. I think the next highlight would be being a part of the Jimmy Awards. National High School Musical Theater Awards, I think is the acronym, but they're known as the Jimmies. So I was fortunate enough to win basically the award for Best Male Actor in the state of Florida, high school male actor. Went to New York to compete with actors from all over the country. So I got to do that, and I met some of the most amazing people and got to perform on my first Broadway stage at the Minskoff for one night only. And that was an incredible journey. Right after that, the next highlight is definitely going to Penn State, getting a full ride to go to Penn State to study musical theater, where I met some brilliant people and just had a great time learning and kind of honing the craft. Right after that, I mean, it was kind of bing, bang, boom after that. I jumped on a cruise ship for 5.5 months, and not too much time later, I joined the 20th anniversary cast of Rent. And we got to go all over the country and got to go to Japan for a month. So to be able to do that show and to do it as Benny and understudy Roger, to be one of the few professional Black Rogers ever in the history, was really big for me.
Amazing.
And pretty soon after that was Ain't Too Proud. And I think somewhere in there was also a show called Blood at the Root, which I'm super proud of. It's the first script that got published that has my name in it for original cast, which is unreal. And but that was a brilliant, brilliant show that I was so fortunate to be a part of the creation of while I was at Penn State.
So that's quite a long list of things that have happened just in a very short amount of time. I'm really curious about your decision to become an actor. So you said that when you were super young, you just knew that you wanted to be an actor. Did you have any kind of plan B, or was that it?
No plan B. No plan B. That was never kind of a thing for me. And I credit it a lot to my mom, who is the original outrageous thinker of the family, because she had this child and was living in an apartment and was getting ready to move, and made sure that she moved to a house that was in the same district as the arts elementary school. So it's a part of the magnet program down here in South Florida, where each school has a different discipline, and you can bus kids in for that discipline, but a lot of times you have to audition, or there's different reasons why sometimes you can't go to that school. but she made sure that the arts were going to be important in my life in some way. Did she know this was gonna happen? Absolutely not. But she knew how important the arts were. It was instilled, in her by her mother, and so that's really where it started, and I think because of that, I always thought it was possible. It was never not a possibility because even in 1st grade and 2nd grade, I was learning all of the disciplines. I was going to dance, I was going to band. And then in 3rd grade, which is around the time I decided I wanted to be an actor, they make you pick a major and a minor. So you stop doing all of the disciplines and you major in one discipline and you minor in another. And I picked acting and strings where I played the viola. And the acting program actually got cut later that year. And so, viola became my major and technical theater became my minor, but we still did shows, and it was between that and a production of Cats that I saw, which is why I'm still a cat person to this day. Between my initials being Cat and Cats being the first professional show I've seen, I'm kinda stuck on the cat train. But between those 2 things, it just felt right, and it felt, again, practical. I think that was the crazy part about it.
A lot of people would see that as very outrageous. You always hear of parents who say, "What's your backup plan going to be? What are you going to do if Broadway doesn't work out or theater doesn't isn't
Right.
a reality?" And so it strikes me as being kind of outrageous to go out there and outrageous on your mom's part to let you pursue your career that way.
Of course. If I had known my mother as a friend of hers at the time, I probably
Mhm.
would have questioned some of her choices. It was so funny because I was doing viola and we started to go to concerts, specifically Dave Matthews Band concerts, because she wanted to show me that you could play strings in a different way. And she told me later it wasn't that she thought, oh, I was going to be a professional viola player, pick up the violin finally and do that. She was just like, it's just going to open so many doors for you. It's going to open what your brain can do for you. And that's really the way she came at it. And I came at it with this idea of like, this is what I'm going to do. I don't understand how she had the courage to trust in me. I feel like this child, but she trusted that, if this is the journey I was to go on, she would be by my side and has been up until she was my date for opening night on Broadway.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, it sounds like you have a really special mom. I look forward to meeting her someday.
Absolutely.
And also, as a side note, I'm a huge Dave fan. All right. So,
Oh,
but that's a conversation for another day. So,
for another day,
right,
sure.
right. Okay. So let's talk about right now. It's a weird time, obviously. The pandemic
Oof.
has totally changed performance life and New York and all of that. I would love to know, how do you think Broadway is going to look and feel changed when, I'm saying when, not if, but when we go
Right.
back?
Right. No, of course, when, absolutely when. That's definitely not a question. Yeah, I think it's going to be really different. I think it's going to take some time to get used to. But while I say that, I was fortunate enough to be up in New York this past weekend. I can say this now because they announced it to film with the Ain't Too Proud cast for the special on NBC called One Night Only.
Oh,
So yeah, thank
congratulations.
you so much. Tina Fey is hosting, and it's going to be a great time. We got to see kind of a glimpse of what does this COVID life look like, and it's a lot less touchy feely than it was before. There aren't a lot of hugs and things like that happening, but the chemistry hasn't changed at all. The love that I have for these people and the love I have for what we do hasn't changed. And if anything, it's grown. So I think we're going to see, there's going to be some hesitation and there's going to be some growing pains as far as, oh, we've got to get tested, temperature checks and whatnot. Or like when we're in rehearsal, we've got to stay 6 feet away and all of those little things that are going to kind of be a nuisance. But I think what we're gonna see is just a outpouring of love and support that goes back and forth from the people on stage to the people out in the audience, of just having this national treasure back, of having this art form back. I think it's if you look through history, the American musical theater art form is just it's always been at the center of what we do as Americans and how we communicate with each other and how we express ourselves. And to not have that right now, I think is really trying. So I think to have that back is going to just be a really special moment.
So, in terms of this idea of a plan B, has it changed your perspective on that? Have you had to figure out other ways to be creative or come up with new projects or take a side gig or
Right, sure. That's a fantastic question and a question I think everybody has kind of tackled right in this moment.
right?
But the key word that I keep hearing from myself and from my colleagues is pivot, right? It's not so much of a plan B, but it's pivoting and diversifying what it means to create. So for me, I've started writing. It's my big outrageous moment of 2020 is
Hey.
I finally sat down at my computer and decided to write some shows and write. I've got a couple TV and movie ideas that are finally coming out as well. So not just stage. But that I would not have had that without Corona, truthfully, because one of the biggest excuses I always gave myself was, "I just don't have the time." And then Corona said, "All right, I'll give you all the time you need." So I started writing, and I've sent out some of my scripts, and I've gotten a great response, and all of a sudden, I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm going, "Hey, you might not suck at this."
Come on
You
now.
know, but it was one of those things where that is such a big worry. You've got the imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
where people are just gonna call you out, but you never know until you do it, or you never know what the reaction is gonna be, and truthfully, you shouldn't worry about it because as a creator, your only job is to create. Right? At the end of the day, your audience is going to react however they're going to react. You can't control that. But what you can control is whether or not you're putting pen to paper or you're moving. So I'm doing that every once in a while, still releasing some freestyle dance videos. I've got a couple of choreographed dance videos that are on kind of the docket. But that's been the big thing for me is pivoting and understanding that you've got to diversify. It can't just be one mode of expression because God forbid anything happens, you can't lose that expression. You, as the artistic person, you, as the creative person, you need that outlet. I think at the beginning of COVID, I was going crazy because I didn't have it. That's kind of been it for me. So, not a plan B. There are some people that have said, Thank you so much, theater. This is my bow. That is not where I'm at.
Well, that is really fantastic to hear because I think a lot of people are asking themselves this question, like, okay, I've got to completely give up what I've been doing in the past. But your comment about pivoting and diversifying, I think is just brilliant. I think that's the key here, especially for artists who
Absolutely.
generally artists are naturally multifaceted. I love that you're working on new projects and I'm excited to hear about them. Are you dancing? How are you staying in shape for returning to Broadway?
Well, I'm glad you've asked me today, because today I get to sit here and tell you I
Hey.
actually just came from the gym. So there you go. No, truthfully, towards the beginning of Corona, I wasn't leaving my house, my apartment in New York. They had shut down the gym within the building as well. And so for a while, I didn't do anything, which has been tough, actually, because then I gained a substantial amount of weight that has really kind of affected my confidence and self-image and all of those things. Recently I have decided to kind of get back on the horse. I've enlisted the help of my friends over at Built for the Stage, which is a fitness regimen and plan and whatnot that caters towards performers. And so I'm now working with them to kind of get back in shape. And the big goal, they ask you, what's your goal? It was twofold. It was to regain confidence, and then it was to get ready for the show. Because even if it's 6 months out, I spent 6 months doing
Right.
nothing. So I need at least 6 months to get something back. You got to at least do the same amount of time getting active. It's been a journey. I think this almost year now has been a full journey.
I know for me, there are people that are inspiring to me or mentors or people I check in with. Is there anything like that that you're doing to stay motivated?
Actually, I'm doing the opposite, which I hate to be contrary, but I'm actually trying to stay away from looking at or towards people because I feel like that's when I start to compare myself, which is, I guess, my own psyche and thing. But yeah, for me, it's like, okay, I need to stop scrolling Instagram. I need to stop looking at my friends that have lost 20 pounds. I was one of my castmates while we were filming was like, yeah, man, I couldn't keep no weight on. So I lost like 20 pounds. I was like, how dare you, sir? you know, but for him, that was just as affecting to him
Right.
as me gaining 20 pounds. And I think that was the big thing that I learned in that moment. It was because a lot of it was, muscle or whatever that he had lost. And that was really devastating. So I think that was the big lesson was to kind of stop comparing because no two people are alike. So that's really it for me is not so much looking towards people, but kind of looking inward self-image wise. Are you confident again? Do you feel like you can do certain things? I mean, for a while there, I couldn't do 10 push-ups. I mean, it got rough. So it's okay. We're on the upswing. It's a journey and it always is going to be a journey. So hopefully I'm on the up.
I think I already know the answer to this question, but it may have changed since you and I last sat down and had a cup of coffee. So I'm curious
Hmm.
what you think that your dream role or your dream show is.
Fascinating. What did I say last
You
time?
said Hadestown.
That's right. I
Right.
did. I know because I had just seen it and it still is just one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen. No, I think, and I always grimace every time I answer this question because it at first glance sounds very cliche. But my dream role in my dream show right now is definitely Hamilton in Hamilton,
Hmm.
which took a long time to get to. Quick backstory. Before I graduated from Penn State, they were transferring from the public to Broadway. And I went in and auditioned and got all the way through to final callbacks for the original Broadway cast and then didn't get it, which was just heartbreaking. But that was the first of many heartbreaking close calls with Hamilton. I've been in for them well over, I think, 30 times now. So it's one of those things, and everybody that meets me, everybody that knows me, is like, it's a matter of
Hmm.
not if, but when. For the longest time, I was looking at roles like Burr. I was looking at roles
Right.
like Jefferson, Lafayette, but it wasn't until I got to see it, I think for the second time when I was working merch at Hamilton, which we
Okay.
can unpack later. You want to talk about pivoting. I saw one of the Hamiltons that was probably one of the best actors that I've ever seen. And I realized just how brilliant that role is and just how specific it is to my personage and my experience. His big metaphor is about being in the eye of a hurricane. And I've actually stood in the middle of the eye of a hurricane before because I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So I know exactly what that looks like and what he's talking about in that moment. Talking about writing like you're running out of time. That's the new
Yep.
one for me, but I've got 4 or 5 projects that I've already completed. So from that to his love of hip hop and use of hip hop, the idea of wanting to show people what you're made of and to make your parents proud, is one of his big things. It's one of those things where I'm not an orphan. I, of course, still have my mother, but I always want to make her proud. A lot of it has to do with making her proud. So all of those little things, and I mean, I could go through the whole show to the point where it's scary, to the point where I went, "Oh, I've been looking at the wrong role." And truthfully, I think in casting has also been looking at me for the wrong role. I think they see Lawrence, like his son, or
Right.
maybe Jefferson because I've got the afro going on. Me and David are little afro buddies. But But I think as soon as we both come to the conclusion that maybe I should be seen for Hamilton, I think things may fall into place.
That's amazing. I feel like that's a confidence thing too for you, coming into an understanding of your ability to carry a show like that. as well.
Absolutely. I think that was one of the biggest reasons why I never put Hamilton in that conversation. And I didn't realize it until I got on Broadway, until I realized that I was holding myself back from to titular character because I was nervous that I wasn't worthy of that. So I'm slowly trying to shed that.
Yeah. And it's dreaming big. It's being outrageous with your dreams too. And this is part of the reason that I started this podcast in the first place is to promote the idea that it's okay to dream these sort of enormous dreams and have a passion and to aim for something that maybe people have told you is out of your reach, or
Right.
your own mindset has told you that it's out of your reach. But we spend so much time, with these negative stories that we tell ourselves. And especially performers are, oh my gosh, we're the worst at
Oh, yeah.
self-deprecating comments, and
Yep.
perfectionism, right? I think the idea of dreaming bigger and outside the box of what everybody else has told you is possible is part of the reason for this podcast.
Absolutely. And it's why I was so excited to get on this. But part of my thing, I think, is not only people telling you what you can or can't do, but I think it's also the silence. For the longest time, I looked at really successful people and then I looked at the people around them. The people around them usually are telling them, yes, you can do that. Yes, you, but it's because they got to a place where people finally got on board. But at some point, almost every brilliant person in the spotlight had to say, no, I'm going to do this. And you can either come with me or you can watch me from the sidelines. But for me, that was a big thing. It wasn't so much people telling me I couldn't do it, just no one told me that I could. Um,
Right.
no one was like, hey, you can, if you want to write a script, go write a script. So I was waiting for permission to live outrageously.
Hmm.
And you miss some of the greatest moments when you're waiting for permission to be great.
Hmm.
You don't need permission. You've got enough because you already are.
That was your sound bite, just to be clear.
There it is.
So, if you were going to dream, obviously we just talked about Hamilton, right? Like that's a
Sure.
fantastic thing to dream about, but you've written some of these scripts and you're talking about shows and everything. So let's say that I gave you unlimited resources and
Mm,
time, money, people, all of that. What would you do? What would be like the
everything.
first
I
Okay,
would
what would
do
be
it
the
all.
first thing that you would do?
No. See, now we're not being outrageous. Now
All
we're
right, all right.
limiting the outrageousness. No, that's okay. That's like we'll play the game though. I think the first thing I would do, truthfully, is produce one of the latest scripts that I'm working on right now. It's a musical with another Penn Stater, Maria Wearies. So we're collaborating on it, and it's really important to us. It's tackling culture and being biracial and what culture and history means to biracial people. So that is something I'm very excited about and has a good head of steam already. It does mean so much to me. And I think is going to be really important, and I just want as many people as possible to see it. But yeah, if I was being really outrageous, I would do that. I'd finally have an album. I'd finally make my own podcast. All of those things would also happen.
I love that you're writing from your experience too. I think that is so key right now in the dialogue culturally in our society. And I think we're at the beginning. I feel like we're just at the beginning of musical theater being this beautiful vessel for the messages that need to get
Mhm.
through. So I love that that's your outrageous dream, right? And that you're writing this and putting your heart and your story into it. That really is meaningful. I know a lot of other people share the same hope that we will be able to dialogue and gain ground. If we can use the arts to do that, more power to everyone.
Absolutely. So thank you for saying that. First off, that means a lot. Right now, all I know how to do is write from my experience, at least partially. And I think it's been my mission statement for quite some time now to highlight biracial stories, and specifically for me, mixed of white and black cultures are super important to me because I think it's a large and growing population that doesn't often get the spotlight, um, I think we get used in a way, right? I think, oh, beautiful babies, or oh my gosh, this mixed person is so, beautiful and talented. But do you know their story? Like, how many of those stories have you actually seen? Not many. You've kind of just fetishized them and moved on. So it's really been important to me to start to create a space. And I know there are other artists out there doing it as well, to create a space for these stories. But when you're of truly almost polar opposite cultures, I think it's a superpower and I love it and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I just want everyone else to know how special it is as well.
And thank you for sharing that because I know it's a place of vulnerability and it's a hard dialogue to have in our society right now. It's really
Right.
difficult. So thank you for sharing that. I would like to make this moment the time for Christian's outrageous advice. so,
Woo!
so put on your thinking cap.
Okay.
All right. We're looking for practical everyday advice on
Right. Okay.
how maybe you do things outrageously and or how people who are listening to this can do something outrageous, infuse that into their daily life.
If we're going to be outrageous daily,
Hmm.
I think the first step for me is doing all the things I give myself excuses not to do. So sometimes that can be going to the gym. I think sometimes that can also be watching a foreign film. That in itself is outrageous, but we don't really think of it that way. Can you get past your own bias to watch a different culture and read subtitles because that story is important? Or try that new recipe that you weren't going to do because it's going to take 30 extra minutes and I really need to get food on the table. But those little things all of a sudden start to unlock just what's possible. All of a sudden, oh, those 30 minutes actually went really quick and my kid helped and they really liked it. All of a sudden, you got a chef on your hands and you didn't even know it.
Right, right.
The butterfly effect of those small things where you don't let yourself off the hook
Hmm.
is just amazing. But there's a balance between giving grace and continuing to challenge yourself. And that's the balance that I think is fun to figure out. And I think that equation equals living outrageously daily.
That is such fantastic advice. And I think the other thing, you were talking about taking care of yourself as well, but for some people, that's the outrageous thing even, right? So
Absolutely. Yes.
we put our self-care and our own wellness after everybody else or after work.
Mhm. Taking 15 minutes for yourself
Right.
to read that book that's been collecting dust on the shelf because it's just what you want to do.
Or do
Um,
nothing.
or do nothing.
Right?
Or,
Just sit.
watch 90 Day Fiancé. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay. I
Right.
mean, I'm not saying I'm not okay, yeah, I just outed myself. That's alright. Here we are.
Let's do one more kind of fun question here. Let's see
Oh, I love
before
it.
we wrap up. Okay. Obviously, you probably have some fans. I want to know about your most outrageous fan or supporter. And if you want to, you can totally give them a shout out on here. That's fantastic.
I think the first one that I will shout out our fans. Sarah, she knows who she is, has actually been a fan of mine and turns out to be a good friend of mine now since Rent. So from Rent days and then to Ain't Too Proud, and she is now the biggest Ain't Too Proud fan. Second, I have to shout out all of the Japanese audiences when I was with Rent, specifically those that came to the New Year's Eve show. So we did a show and it was New Year's Eve. And if you know the show and act two, there's a moment where they go 5, 4, 3, open sesame, happy new year.
Mm-hmm.
And we timed it. We started the show so that that would hit on the new year. And sure enough, we got it right on the money.
Uh-huh.
And that was brilliant. But it was also our last show in Japan. We always had like a little line outside for stage door afterwards, which was beautiful. The line was so long, it took us close to 2 hours to get through
Wow.
because it literally wrapped through the building. And it's customary to give gifts in this situation, and they did. Some of them had come before and had printed out the picture that they took the first time they
Oh,
came on like a thank you note. I had someone give me a hand towel, which is big in the Japanese culture, with Benny written in
oh my
Japanese.
gosh.
Like just the most thoughtful things, or just people that sat there for 2 hours while they were waiting for their favorite characters to come through just to say thank you. They weren't really, not a lot of them were looking for pictures. They sat there and said thank you. And so for me, that is the most outrageous fandom I have
Wow,
ever been a part of.
that is amazing.
So I that's the shout out I've got to give.
Let's say that you have some new fans from this experience and new people that want to connect with you. How can they find you?
The best way is Instagram. So at Christian Thompson actor is the biggest way. You can also check in on the show ain't too proud musical.com to see when we get that date for when we come back.
Yeah.
Definitely catch us on NBC for One Night Only on December 10th, I believe, where you might be able to see a familiar face. Watch my Instagram space. There's some cool things coming.
Christian, thank you so much. This has been such a joy to reconnect with you.
This has been the biggest honor for me, and I am just so glad to be here and to be talking to you again.
Well, you are always welcome anytime you want to come back on the show. Thank you so much. And thank you for teaching us to live a little more outrageously. Well, outrageous friends, it has been my honor and my pleasure to have you here today. I hope that you took away some outrageous ideas for your own life. If you enjoyed yourself, make sure that you are subscribed to Live Outrageously with Lady Grey on whatever your podcast app is. You can also connect with me personally on Facebook at facebook.com/outrageousladygray or on Instagram at lady.gray. Also, be sure to check out our podcast website at www.liveoutrageously.com. Once again, this is Lady Grey encouraging you to go out and live outrageously.